What's going on, guys? Welcome back to some more Quest for 18 content. Today, me and Jake are going to rate our top 10 Lakers players all time, starting from 10 all the way up to number one. And Jake's going to start us off today.
Yeah, so obviously this list is really hard for us to make. It's really hard to also determine the order when both of us have talked about this. It's hard when you don't, you haven't watched a lot of these guys live. Like
Yep.
obviously you're 24, I'm about to be 23. We
Yep.
didn't see, Elgin Baylor. We can't really speak on it, but as huge Laker fans, obviously we go back to the history. We see a lot of the great players who came before, and we feel like we have to honor them even to the best of our ability with this list. With that being said, I start off with a really hot take. You could say for Lakers fans, at 10, I actually have Anthony Davis. And, part of this, you could say, oh, you're 22, you have the bias from the last few years. But I actually really do believe Anthony Davis is a pillar of this franchise. I think in terms of talent, he's one of the most talented to ever come through this franchise. We have a great long list of bigs who've come through, and he's been the guy for this era, right? Starting at the end of the 2010s, he delivered a championship. If he hadn't, I wouldn't have had him on this list, but I still am hopeful that there's more to come from him.
Yeah, it's crazy. I promise you guys, I have my list next to me. At 10, I also have Anthony Davis. Call it recency bias or whatever, but another name that will pop up. There's a reason why I have him ahead of AD, but I feel like their impact as bigs. AD is a one-on-one generational type defender. That's just a fact. And he's a great offensive player as well. So I think it's fair to have him on this list, and he's going to be a Laker for a long time to come. I believe that. I think he's going to retire with us, and we have a lot of years to kind of help him build up that championship resume and continue to compete with us. So I also do have 80 at 10, and like Jake said, we haven't watched a lot of these old heads, but we will try our best to rate them as fairly that we see fit. So
Yeah. No, I'm right with you with AD. I think if he retires a Laker as we expect and he adds to this resume, like he can even climb on this list. But at
mm-hmm.
number 9, I have one of my favorite players, probably my second favorite player growing up. Watching the 2009, 2010 Lakers and such in that era, it's Pau Gasol. Pau is someone who all Lakers fans adore. He absolutely is worthy of a spot on this list. Kobe Bryant's probably second best teammate in terms of talent after Shaq. He's just a guy who really embodied being a Laker. We obviously got to see his brother play here later in his career as well. And that just the name Pau Gasol is synonymous with the Lakers. You could really say that at this point, even though he wasn't a Laker for as long as you would expect in his
Yep.
entire career.
Yeah. Number 9 for me, I have Pau Gasol. That was kind of my hint at why this player is above him. Pau Gasol obviously right now has more championships than AD. But that can change. Like me and Jake said, this list is definitely dynamic. It can definitely change over time. And yeah, Pau Gasol, he's a dog. I mean, his offensive ability and his defensive ability, his dynamic duo with Kobe Bryant. I mean, he just brought so much to the table. They kind of changed the way Lakers basketball is played from that perspective. It wasn't necessarily like Shaq just going in there, throwing him the ball and just pounding in the paint. Pau Gasol was more of a finesse type of player, and he just played very well with Kobe Bryant. So I have him on this list. If he had more championships, obviously he would be a lot higher, but and if he played there a little bit longer. So for me, wrapping up my 9 as well with Pau Gasol.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. For me, it gets a little bit tricky for the next few, just in terms of what we talked about with some of the players who came before my time. But from
Mm-hmm.
what I've seen, my number 8 is James Worthy. I feel like he's very worthy, no pun intended, of being on this list. He's a guy who stepped up in all of the big games. His nickname's Big Game James for a reason. He's also a legend with the Lakers broadcast, with us growing up watching the Lakers games and him kind of giving his feedback and analysis of the games. He's someone who is truly a Laker at heart. And I think on a list like this with a historic team, like we value people who've been around the Lakers for a lot of their lives, and have given so much to this team with different aspects. And for me, James Worthy will be number 8.
Yeah, for me, we're swapping paths slightly, but we're still kind of there. My number 8 right now is the man, the myth, the legend. The did it happen? Did it not? Mr. Wilt Chamberlain, 100 points. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of stories surrounding Wilt Chamberlain. Biggest basketball beast of all time as far as the physicality on the court. And I like his game. Like, obviously, we don't have a lot of film on him, but for the most part, historically, he is a great Laker. 2 championships, so I feel like 8 is probably a great spot. And like Jake said again, like we were kind of emphasizing, we didn't really get to watch a lot of these players, and we don't have the most film to go off of. But out of respect, I'm including him on this list as well. So he's my number 8.
Yeah, for sure. At 8 for me, or 7 for me, excuse me. At 7, I got Elgin Baylor.
Nice.
He's a guy who was on the Minneapolis Lakers as well with George Mikan. But when you look at the Lakers' history, he's truly a pillar of the original success of this team, of having that championship culture. And there were a lot of times where him and George Mikan were considered two of the best players to ever play. Before the times of Magic and Michael Jordan and the guys who came after.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is where I'm kind of catching up to you. At my number 7 spot, I have James Worthy. Like you said, he's still involved in our community a lot. A lot of pressure getting drafted, came in, performed immediately, and helped contribute to winning championships for this team. And I think his legacy just continues on. So I think that's the best spot for me to put James Worthy. And Elgin Baylor is a great name, obviously, to have on this list as well. So that's a good pick at 7.
And then at 6, it becomes tricky for me in a sense of this is my second favorite player of all time. But looking at this list specifically, we're looking at their time with the Lakers. We have to be clear. I believe that this player is the best player to ever wear a Lakers uniform because I have him as my greatest player of all time. And you guys can obviously tell who it's going to be because Michael Jordan did not play on the Lakers. It's LeBron James. I got LeBron at 6, obviously. Like I said, look, he has meant everything to the Lakers. The recency bias and me, being young has him over guys like Elgin Baylor and James Worthy, but it's also the talent of LeBron James that he brings to the table. In my opinion, the greatest player of all time. I want to put him higher on this list. I really do. But for me, still, I would want him to win, 1 or 2 more championships with the Lakers. It's still possible, but because of his greatness on the Cavs and the Heat, I couldn't put him higher on strictly a Lakers list for now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And speaking of number 6, jersey number 6 at times, I have to agree with Jake. I think LeBron James, he's a Laker, man. I was looking at his basketball reference, and he's played here for 6 years. So I feel like, no fun intended, 6 years with the Lakers, number 6 jersey, we ball. So I think LeBron James, for me, he is my GOAT. I've watched him play since I was a kid, and he's been dominating since then, all the way now to my adulthood. So when somebody stays that consistent in their life, I think it's only fair to put them on these higher tier lists. And Jake is right. Like, as far as in a Lakers jersey, just unfortunately, he came to us a little bit later in his age, and he hasn't got the amount of championships we would hope as a Laker. And the guys ahead of him are just Lakers prestige because of those reasons. So LeBron James, top 6 on a list like this is an honor. So I feel comfortable putting him here as well.
Yeah, I agree. And getting into that prestige that you talked about at 5, I have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who on a lot of Lakers lists can be much higher than this. Honestly, he
Mhm.
won multiple championships, multiple MVPs. He was a big reason why the Showtime Lakers are legendary, and even slightly before and after that, just the impact that he had on this organization. He was the all-time leading scorer, obviously, in the NBA up until this year. Really thankful that he was a Laker, and the things he did off the court really represented the Lakers well. With him being kind of a pioneer for social justice issues for a long time, like even up until this day, he still contributes greatly to the Laker community. And honestly just the community of the world in general. Kareem is one of the most important people, athletes at least, to ever walk the earth, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. For my five, see, this is where it starts getting a little bit tricky. Um, I have a couple names interchangeable here. I think I'm going to go. Mm, oh, I'm stuck here. I know I have it here, but I kind of want to. You know what? Whatever. At my five, I think I'm going to go with Shaquille O'Neal. I feel like Shaquille O'Neal, Lakers legend. Obviously, when you think about Shaq, you think about Kobe. And while although I have one of these guys a lot higher, it's solely because he stuck with the grind. Good days, bad days. Um, which we're not talking about him right now. But Shaq, dominant player, one of the greatest big men of all time, most dominant big man of all time, size, physicality, strength. And I'm just saying, if Shaq would have been the same physique he was in Orlando Magic, all the way into the Lakers through all those prime years, what he was doing to those teams, you can times that by two. So Shaq, he made my top five. I know a little bit lower for a lot of people out there, but I feel like it's still respectful.
Yeah, and at four for me, I have Shaq. Obviously, one spot higher than you, but a lot of the reasons you said really hold true. I think Shaq is a guy who is known for a lot of teams or has at least played on a lot of teams, but he'll always be known most as a Laker. And in the time he was here, coming in with Kobe at the same time, not only do I think they were the best duo of all time, but Shaq on his own won three Finals MVPs. Right when we
Yeah,
three-peated around the time that I was born, just going back and watching that, it's clear he was the most dominant player ever. And if you win three Finals MVPs, especially in a row, you got to be a top five player for that franchise. And
yep,
for most franchises, frankly, that would be number one. But we're talking about the Lakers, and there's a few guys who've impacted the franchise a little bit more.
yeah, for sure. For me, my four, I'm going to put, like I said, these last names are a little bit interchangeable, but for my four, I think I'm gonna slide in my guy Jerry West. Jerry West, absolute Laker legend. He is one of the better defenders in the NBA, most underrated players all time. I feel like he does not get a lot of credit. I mean, career average 27 points a game with just under 6 assists as well. He was great, and he is our NBA logo. You don't go a day watching NBA content without seeing Jerry West. That's just a fact, and you never will. That will never change. So for that reason, he could have been higher on my list for sure, but I'm going to put him number four out of respect to him and the game and the legacy he's left behind. And even after that, his resume with teams as well and the GM off front office and stuff, he's expanded his legacy. So he's four for me.
Yeah, and for me at three, I have Jerry. Obviously, a little flip
Yep.
flop from you,
Mm-hmm.
but I really do wish he was able to finish his career working in front offices with the Lakers.
Yeah.
We've heard stories about falling out between him and the Lakers ownership, which is horrible to hear about. But obviously, rest in peace to one of the most important basketball players and minds the game has ever seen. Not only on the court, what he established about this Lakers culture back then, but being the GM and being in the front office and kind of changing how GMs even act in general and kind of setting a standard of excellence there. He's really one of the masterminds behind the Showtime Lakers and then even further into the Shaq and Kobe era. So just everything overall, what Jerry's done, I have him at number three. And what holds him from being top two is that the top two are some of the best players of all time, just
Yep.
strictly on the court. And what they kind of brought to the Lakers in terms of accolades can't be beaten.
Yeah. Getting into my top three, I got Kareem. Kareem made my top three. He is not top two, as Jake said. Those top two spots are reserved for the best of the best as far as Lakers. Not saying Kareem's not that. All the Kareem fans don't attack me. Um, Great player, man. Like Jake said, activist off the court. He's done so much to help us. and just this country unite in general. So I appreciate what he's done. It was kind of harder for guys to speak out during those type of eras. You think about the Muhammad Ali's as well, guys like that in the sports world. It's hard to go do that and then go out there and play basketball and get criticized as well. So I appreciate that part of him. And then on top of that, number two score, leading scorer of all time, used to be number one. It's still weird to say that. Who thought that record would have ever been beaten? But he set that standard. And not a lot of people are going to not only not touch number one, but definitely not come close to number two either. So he's solidified in the history books. That is why he has made my big three as far as Lakers all time, and he sits at the number three spot.
Yeah, I love what you said there about Kareem. For me, number two, I got Magic Johnson. I do believe, in a certain sense, both Magic and obviously you guys all know who I put number one,
Mm-hmm.
really embody the Lakers more than any other people to ever come through the organization. And with Magic, it's not just about his on court performance, but he is, consensusly a top 5 to 8 player of all time in NBA history. Certainly a top 2 player in terms of on the court for the Lakers. He's someone who delivered at every stage and did it with a smile. And then even after he retired, just the impact he's had on this team. I know some people, with recency bias could focus on when he was, president of basketball operations and
Yep.
things didn't work out the way we wanted and he ended, sooner than we would have hoped. But he
Yeah.
still brought LeBron James to the Lakers. And
Yep.
not only that, I think he's a big reason that any free agent or traded player wants to be a Laker. They see what Magic did, the standard he set. And, with us coming over to LA, only 10 years before Magic, he really embodied everything about Los Angeles too. And as
Yep.
a Michigan kid, he came to LA and made this city kind of the city of dreams itself. So I think Magic is, arguably number one, but for me, he's got to be number two just because of, what number one meant to this team.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in the same boat here. I'm just gonna piggyback off of you. Number two for me is Magic Johnson. Like you said, his impact, man, it just can't be taught. And you talked about like off like court stuff too with the Lakers. Without Magic Johnson, there is no LeBron James. I know you've seen that interview too, where he talked about if I was still in the office, we would have easily had Paul George. Because Magic Johnson, he's a guy who knows how to go after people. He goes and gets whatever they want. He's prepared before meetings and he presents it to you. Boom, everything you thought you wanted plus more, he has it lined out for you. And that type of presence was shown as far as his career as well. One of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest passers of all time. I mean, dude was a ball. I was just looking at his basketball reference once again. 4-time assist champion, 2-time steal champion, 5-time NBA champ, 10-time All Star, 3x MVP, 3 Finals MVP, All Rookie team. Just so many accolades from a guy. Like he's shown success from day one, year one. He joined the league. So for that, we know what it means to be a Laker. And when you think about Lakers, there's two bigger names that you think of: Magic Johnson and the next person I'm sure Jake will talk about coming up.
Yeah, and those accolades are crazy, but just essentially the energy he brought. A
Yeah,
lot of people credit him and Larry Bird, that rivalry in the early 80s, kind of actually making the NBA what it even is today. Like, I don't know if there's an NBA that's as successful without Magic Johnson. Like,
yeah,
his spirit really embodied what the current NBA has become. And even when you see guys who are all cheerful and great around the media, great for the NBA world in general, I do believe a lot of it comes from Magic Johnson, who everyone has said who's been around him that he's lit up the room every time, and even to this day. So, just to get into number one here, a lot of people could have guessed this one. This guy is my favorite athlete ever. This guy got me into not only basketball, but sports. I grew up at the perfect time, as did Earl, to watch this guy
Yep.
play most of his career. Obviously, when we were super young and right before we were born, we missed part of the origin story with the Lakers,
Yep.
but we all know it well because we all went back to watch this guy. In my opinion, the most entertaining player I've ever watched, the hardest working player in NBA history. Number one, Kobe Bryant. Um, there You cannot overstate the impact that Kobe Bryant had on the Lakers and all of us. I know people in LA, many people growing up in LA who only are into sports because of this guy. He was a special player and person. Obviously, his death affected us all, but I do want to say, even regardless of that, putting that aside, me and a lot of other people, including Earl, would have had this guy number
Yep.
one regardless because of what he
Easy.
did. And when his chapter with the Lakers ended in 2016, it was probably the most sad day for the franchise at that point that we had experienced, because he is everything I want every Laker to be going forward. And no Laker has been able to live up to the standard and the legacy that he's set. And one day I hope someone does, and he looks down proud at that person, knowing that he set that example and set that bar.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, I'll say I think Jake hit pretty much every point I want to make, and my number one as well is Kobe Bryant. And we talk about like all time NBA of guys who are league changers, like the Currys of the world who changed 3-point shooting, LeBron James, physicality, aggression, Michael Jordan, winning mentality. But Kobe Bryant, we literally have a name called Mamba mentality. A guy who can be laser focused, locked in, have an alter ego on the court, and becomes unstoppable, not phased by what's going on with his body. Fingers dislocated, pops it back in. Ankle messed up, hops it out. Like that's the type of mentality that guys go and try to develop to be great NBA players. That's his impact. When you shoot a basketball in a trash can, they're not yelling Jordan, they're not yelling LeBron, they're yelling Kobe. That's what we did growing up. We shot Kobe every day. Like that's the type of impact he had for us fans across the world. He had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, overseas fan base of an NBA player. I say only other person I would say kind of related, but not unrelated. I'll say probably like a Stephon Marbury, because when he went overseas, his impact was crazy. But Kobe Bryant, different level as far as like top NBA guys. So Kobe Bryant, man, is so many good things you can say about him, the basketball player. But then you think about off court things. He started a beautiful family. He was able to impact women's basketball all the way up to obviously his tragic passing. Um, but yeah, I think Kobe Bryant, he's just impacted the world in general. Like he won an Oscar. Like he's done so many different things, non-basketball related, but his resume as a Laker is one of the greatest. Like that's just putting things into perspective. We just talked about everything he's done outside of Lakers without touching his basketball resume at all. So I think Kobe Bryant, he will always be a part of the game. And I agree with Jake. We have not seen a Laker take on that Kobe persona as far as his mentality going into every single game. And hopefully we can hope, we can dream, we can pray that we see that in our lifetimes, Jake, watching basketball, that we can see somebody like we that makes us sit back and be like, man, like that's what Kobe would have done. So shout out to Kobe, deserving number one on this list, and a great way to wrap up our top 10 for sure.
Yeah, and just Kobe in general is the person of my lifetime. I think a lot of us would agree that you can see that the world is a far worse place without Kobe Bryant. And
Yeah,
I'm not trying to end it on a somber note, but
yeah,
rather like respect for him, what he did as an athlete, but a lot more importantly as a person. I think it has been, very clear to all of us. And people who are from LA, their whole life is impacted by Kobe Bryant. Like people
yeah,
who don't even watch sports, they know the impact of Kobe Bryant in California, but also throughout the country and across the world. Like as you
yeah.
said, for that, I think he's a top few NBA player of all time, but easily the most important and best on the court Laker of all time.
Yeah. I agree with you, man, and I think that's a perfect way to end off this episode. We appreciate everybody for watching us fully through. Those of you guys who did, thank you so much for joining us with some more Quest for 18 content. I'm Earl. This is Jake, and of course, our other members, Alan and Alex, will be on other videos on the channel. So if you like the content, make sure you follow our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all things down below in our link tree. Have a blessed day. We'll talk to you guys all later. Peace.